How to wow customers for life. Disney secrets for Main Street businesses. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, John Kuntz, and welcome to another edition of the Disruptor Podcast. For those that are new to our show, the Disruptor series is your blueprint for groundbreaking innovation. We started the podcast in December of 2022 as a periodic segment of the Apex podcast. Our vision was to go beyond conventional wisdom by confronting the status quo and exposing the raw power of disruptive thinking. And today's guest embodies that spirit. Vance Morris went from Disney cast member to carpet cleaner to customer experience expert, proving you don't need the theme park budget to wow your customers. Today, we'll explore how to turn everyday customer interactions into loyalty-building experiences, drive referrals, repeat business, and long-term revenue. Welcome to the show, Vance.
I appreciate it, John. Thanks. We'll have a little fun today.
Yeah, we should. This is a great one that's near and dear to my heart. But before we get going, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your background, education, experiences, how'd you get here? Feel free to start anywhere you want.
Sure, thanks. Well, I would go back to I was a wee lad in a log cabin, but probably a little too far back for everybody. But lived up and down the mid-Atlantic, Northeast area, and spent a great deal of time working for a little company called Walt Disney World. And that was my first real job, I think, out of college. I think I worked at a couple of restaurants beforehand, but nothing that would compare. And for your first job out of school, I don't think there could be a better place as far as to create your base and your foundation for how you're going to kind of run your life and run your business life thereafter. And I found it to be fascinating. I mean, one, I was a young guy, not even married yet, not even the first time or the second time. Hey, or the third time, but we won't go there. What I learned immediately at Disney was not the whole, everybody expects you to talk about, oh, you pick up trash real quick and the place is clean and, everybody's nice to each other and they're all rushing around to make sure that you have a great experience. And that's all true. First thing I learned really was that Disney runs on systems and processes, and they are simple systems and processes. So if they were difficult, the whole thing would fall apart. Because you got to remember who's running the rides and who's waiting on people. It's a lot of, teenagers or retirees, and they don't want to have to do a lot of thinking. So let's make the job as easy as possible. The Whopper in, New Jersey tastes the same as no, they don't do Whoppers. Big Macs, sorry. Big Macs taste the same everywhere. The same principle. I am living proof that people do survive after leaving Disney, after 10 and a half years there. Spent a number of years in the retirement community business. Spent a number of years in corporate food service, so a lot of hospitality. I found that I make a lousy employee. I don't like to be told what to do. So hence the first and second ex-Mrs. Morris's extended there as well. And so I started my own businesses in 2007, did what every small boy dreams of doing when they're growing up. I started a carpet cleaning business. And one of the reasons I did that was, one, I was looking for something that I could do that didn't require millions of dollars in investment. So restaurants were off the table. Even to get into a Five Guys franchise, you need $1 million liquid cash. And I was like, that's not for me. But I immediately positioned it as a premium level service. So we were not going after the coupon clipping crowd. We were going after the affluent market, which proved to be a smart move, if I do say so myself, because their expectations are a lot different. Really, it's a faster way to getting profitable. You serve affluent people. If you serve poor people, you're going to be poor. If you serve affluent people, well, you got a chance of moving up the chain. So I've had that business now going on 18 years. Added a Oriental rug washing facility to it. Added a mold remediation company to it. And back in 2013, I started coaching and consulting other companies on how to implement what I implemented and, create those moments of wow, and really create customers for life.
As interesting and awesome as we were prepping for this call, we discussed my experience with Disney. So my first career, actually most of my career, was with IBM, and we used to go, we'd made our numbers. We would get to go to the 100% club. A lot of times it would be down there. We'd go down there and have a big powwow with all the IBM salespeople. They would always bring Disney folks in to talk to us about, and this was 30 years ago, before I would say the customer experience. Today, user experience and customer experience is sort of in the forefront of everybody just because of devices and apps and things like that. But back then, I think Disney was one of the first folks that really sort of stressed the importance of the experience. Simple things, as we talked about, they called them guests, and the employees were cast members. And as you mentioned, the processes were simple, very much like what we used to do at IBM. Our processes were very simple. It was respect for the individual, best possible service to our customers, every task performed in a superior manner. Those were our basic beliefs. And it's funny, as you fast forward, those things still hold true. And I think sometimes folks forget about that. And you just reiterated how you've been able to play that to your advantage, even as something as simple as a carpet cleaning business. Although I'm sure it's not simple behind the scenes, but the business itself is fairly simple. People have dirty carpets, you go in and clean them, right? So with that said, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see you've been in the service profession business for a long time, and what are some of the biggest mistakes service professionals like contractors and advisors, lawyers, whatever your clientele that you advise and coach, when they are taking more traditional approach to what we call customer acquisition or customer service delivery?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, what most of the people that work with me, my coaching members or my one-on-one clients, they forget about the customer that they already have. And they are constantly focused on new. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have new customers. You should, because you won't have any growth if you don't have new customers. But if you want to have profitable growth, you've got to retain and keep those customers. I mean, if you went to Disney Magic Kingdom today, 80% of the people in the park have been there before. It's only 20% new. And to me, I think that's a great ratio for profitable growth. So I can say in my, carpet cleaning business, we're probably 70-30, which is pretty gosh darn good, considering the industry average is, 20%. We're doing really well. And I think having business people focus on a system for keeping your customers, a customer retention system. I'll ask them all the time. I said, you've got a marketing budget. I said, okay, is that primarily to get new customers? Yes. All right, well, how much money are you spending to keep your customers? And they're, look at me like I got three heads and I do the whole humming thing. And I break it down to them. Getting a new customer is ridiculously expensive. Keeping one is relatively cheap. So, some of my numbers for my home service business cost me $120 to get a new customer in the front door. $120. Now my minimum service is $200. So that leaves me $80 to pay the technician, put gas in the truck, insurance, rent, and all that stuff. Not many shekels left over for me at the end of it. However, for me to market to my existing customers and keep them only costs me $22 a year. And that's direct mail and email. So I would much rather spend $22 a year per customer to keep them around. They're easier to sell to because they've already bought from you. They have the whole know, like, and trust. If you've got a new product coming out, they'll be the first ones to buy it. You want to cross-sell, upsell, whatever. Your existing client base is your gold mine. And I just think too many businesses don't put enough emphasis on that. They feel like, well, I did a good job. They should remember me. And maybe 100 years ago, when you were the only blacksmith in town, that might have been true. But these days, it's completely, you got 20 blacksmiths in town. And so I tell people, I say, look, it is not your customer's job to remember you. It is your job to remind the customers why you exist.
That's great advice. And you actually iterated a statistic that I don't know the numbers, but your numbers are sort of right in line with and we used to say this at IBM all the time. It's a lot easier to sell to your existing customers or clients than it is to go out and find new ones. And you proved that statistic. And we used to use it all the time. And it's funny, I don't know why, but people, I guess, tend to forget about that. Maybe the pressure is to grow the business, and they figure the way to grow the business is new clients or new customers, as opposed to, growing your customer base.
I got 10,000 likes on my last post. Great. You can't deposit a like in the bank. They'll just laugh at you if you show up with 10,000 likes and say, "Can I deposit, please?" I think we're just brainwashed into new. And, these vanity numbers. And I can understand public companies need to have growth, number of users, number of products, et cetera. But at the end of the day, bottom line is what dictates the profitability of the company, not the number of customers you can acquire.
I love that statement. If I had $1 for every time I get an email for some guy that tells me he can make this podcast get 1,000 more downloads or this or that, I'm like, that's fine, but that's not why I'm in business here. And that doesn't put any money in my bank account. When you ask them how you're going to do that, they all look at you like you got 3 heads. Pretty funny. So anyway, moving on, as you advise your coaching clients and so forth, what mindset shift or habit do you wish they would sort of adhere to or adopt before investing more time, as you just mentioned, these traditional marketing tactics?
I think first and foremost, they've got to embrace their personality, especially in small business. I mean, we don't have the marketing budgets of Walmart, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, any of these guys. And we probably never will unless we have an incredible product. So in order to differentiate ourselves in highly commoditized markets, I mean, a dentist is a dentist is a dentist. There's only so many ways you can clean teeth. Well, what separates one dentist from another? They probably do the same job as well. What separates one dentist from another? The only thing is the in-office experience, or bringing in the personality of the dentist, the carpet cleaner, whoever you are. And so many businesses, they think that, I got to have the right name for my business. Well, how about your last name or your first name would be a great start, because that immediately separates you from everybody else out there. Then allowing your personality to shine through. So in most of my marketing, I shamelessly use my children in the marketing. And I don't care. They love it. I mean, they used to get kidded about it. But so, for example, my daughter, who's now 18, I used to do ballet from like 5 until 13. And we would go to the ballet recital every year, and we'd get a picture of her in her little tutu. It's the ones you send out to aunts and uncles and grandmas. And I would take that and put it into my print newsletter that I sent to all my customers. And I would do it every year. Here's Emma at age 5, Emma at age 6. And I think she was 10 or 11 years old, and we're in the grocery store. And this woman comes running up to Emma, and she goes, "Oh my God, Emma, how was your recital?" And we look at each other like, who is this lady? We got to go run and hide in the frozen food section. And I had to think, she's got to be one of my customers. She reads the newsletter. She has watched my child grow up from age 5 to whenever. I've created that emotional connection with her. She is never leaving. I mean, I got to do something horrible for her to leave my company. She's going to stick around until she moves or she dies. And that is the missing piece to most small businesses, is creating that emotional connection. And it sounds woo-woo, but it really isn't. I mean, everybody makes their buying decisions on emotion, and then they justify it with their brain. So great. You don't want to use your kids? Maybe you like fly fishing, or maybe you do knitting or whatever. Bring that kind of personality into your business. It's going to make you memorable. It's certainly going to separate you from all of your other competitors out there. And you're creating that emotional connection, which is basis for customers for life.
I mean, it goes back to that, people buy from people they trust and they know. And If you go back to Simon Sinek's why, why you do something, not what you do. And, they make the emotional decision first, as you mentioned. It's funny. That reminds me, what you just talked about as your daughter, it reminds me of a story here in Cleveland where there's sort of a similar business. They do flooring and, they install floors and carpet and stuff like that. Actually, the people that buy from them could then buy from you to clean them years. But about 20 years ago, it was two brothers running this business, and one of the brothers put their daughter on. She had to be about 8 or 9 years old, and she sort of closed the commercial, right? And they used that mantra for years, and now she's an adult, and she's now back on the commercials with her dad and her dad's brother. And it's like we've all watched this little girl grow up, just like your daughter. And you know what? If I needed flooring, that business is right on top of mind. And I think that's the other point you hit upon, especially today where we're just bombarded with information and social media. Madison Avenue's done a wonderful job of sucking us in and buying stuff we don't need. And so if you don't stay top of mind, by the next time they need their carpets cleaned, because that's something you don't do every day, right? They're going to forget about you. So just nurturing that relationship and moving forward and staying top of mind and building an emotional connection, particularly if you're in a business that's sort of local, but even in a big business like IBM, I would get to know my clients and I would know their kids and what sports they were playing or whatever. And I would compare it to mine. And we would always, over the years, build pretty good relationships with those guys. They didn't always buy from us, but you know what? They trusted me. And when they needed something, they would come back to me. So you've developed this so-called complete system for creating your wow moments. And let's talk a little bit what makes those cost approach stand out, especially as you mentioned, time-strapped business owners, people without big marketing budgets.
It doesn't take a lot to wow somebody or impress somebody. Now, before we go through this, let me stress to everybody, your product or your service better be tight and good or great. If you've got a crappy product or a crappy service, doing wow stuff is only going to accentuate that crappiness. So we want to make sure that you got the basics down first. One thing, creating these wows not need to be a huge investment of resources and money. You don't need a Cinderella castle. You don't need a roller coaster. You just need to have an open mind on how you want to do it. How do you greet people when they walk into your store? How do you answer the telephone? Each one of those moments on the customer journey is an opportunity for you to create an experience, whether it's wow or not, but create an experience around it. And that's what Disney has done so well, is they don't do anything different than anybody else. I mean, they have hotels. Well, there's millions of hotels out there. They have theme parks. Okay, well, there's thousands of those out there. Well, what makes Disney different is finding each one of those points on the customer journey and figuring out a way to create an experience out of it. And Disney's got this down. I'll give you a quick example. So in my carpet cleaning business, one of the boring, mundane things that we have to do is get into the people's home. Right? We can't get into the house. We can't deliver our service. So we've created an entire experience out of getting into the home. And it's completely scripted. All my guys know it. And if they forget something, we know that we send them back to training. Here's the standard we use. And so it goes like this. It starts where we park. So we park in the street. We don't park in the driveway. God forbid we got an oil leak. Now I got something else I got to clean up. And he gets out and he's in a clean, crisp uniform because he carries extra uniforms on the van in case he gets dirty beforehand. He doesn't smell because I don't allow cologne or smoking while you're on the job. There's nothing worse than somebody walking into your house that smells like the Marlboro man who just took a shower in Axe. I mean, that's disgusting. He gets a little gift and he gets his magic rug and he goes up to the front door. He lays down, our special rug, which is, logoed foot mat where we'll wipe our feet. We knock on the door. We don't ring the bell. We take a couple of steps back. And when the customer opens the door, we say, "Hi, my name's Josh. I'm here to create your healthy home. May I come in?" We don't just barge in. And then when we're invited in, we do an exaggeration of wiping our feet on the rug, and then we put little booties on our shoes. And as we're entering the home, we present the customer with a gift. Now, when was the last time you had any home service professional, pest control, carpet cleaner, whatever, give you a gift before they did any work? I'm going to hazard a guess it hasn't happened. So this does a couple of things for us. And the premise is, when you go to somebody's house for a party or whatever, you bring a bottle of wine, you bring some hors d'oeuvres or what have you. So we feel we're going to somebody's house, probably bring them something. So we invented the gift, and it's a custom blue box. And inside the box is a bottle of our spot remover, a bag of cookies, and a little note for me thanking them for allowing them into their home. Now, it cost me less than $5 to do this box. Wow factor is huge, and it also starts another process called reciprocity. I give something to you, you feel compelled to give something back to me. So when we implemented the gift, we saw an increase of our mid-tier package by about 26%, which equates to about an additional $65,000 a year in sales, just by implementing that little $5 box. And my competitors all know I do it. I've seen them hiding in the bushes, watching my guys go into the front door. And it baffles me that others don't do it. I think the reason they don't do it is they think they can't afford to do it, which to me then says you have a pricing problem and you have a value problem. But, our prices, we command 36% higher prices than anybody else in our marketplace. Do we clean 36% better? Maybe. I'd like to think so. But we do provide an experience that no other home service provider is giving.
That's great. It's all the perception of value. And if somebody's about a $5 box, that means they're either commoditizing their services. So they're in the red ocean. You've created a blue ocean, right? Just by creating an experience that not only is memorable, but I love the analogy of, well, if I'm going to somebody's house for dinner, I'm going to bring them some flowers or a bottle of wine or whatever, right? I'm going to thank them for inviting me into their house, and I'm going to help provide some value to the interaction or the exchange. It's the same idea, especially, and I don't think it matters whether you're in a business that goes people's houses, or if you're in a business where people come to you, or if you're in a business that's virtual, like a coaching or a mentoring business. It goes back to just treat people the way you want to be treated, right? And I think people forget about that today. I mean, maybe it's our gray hair and we grew up with that, being hammered into us when we were kids in grade school. But these are such practical advices, which it's sort of funny to me. And I'm glad we're having a discussion because I think people just sort of forget about it today. And I don't know if it's just the nature of the world or what.
Yeah, I mean, I think they look at what every other business is doing, and so it's incestuous. I mean, it's just, and you got to break that cycle by doing something that is not prevalent in your industry. So, I think all great ideas come from outside of your industry. The drive-through at McDonald's, they got the idea for, the drive-through from a McDonald's exec sitting, getting ready to make a deposit at the bank. And, that tube that whooshes up and flies your money over to the teller. He's thinking to himself, well, how do I get a milkshake into that thing? And so you take an idea from one industry and you put it into a completely different industry. And now it's a breakthrough. And we have to look at that. I mean, I'll never forget, you remember Yellow Pages. Well, you and I both remember Yellow Pages. And when I was first starting out, Yellow Pages were still a thing. Do we have to describe Yellow Pages to your audience, or do they know what it is?
Hopefully they know. If they don't, they can Google it. Put a link in the show notes to Yellow Pages.
Yeah, there you go. But as I'm getting ready to place my first Yellow Pages ad, I'm skimming through the existing ads. And if you go to any plumber, electrician, carpet cleaner, every single one of them has a picture of their van or truck in the ad. What the hell's that got to do with anything? Nothing. We assume you have a vehicle to get to my house to do the thing. We don't need a picture of it. So it's wasted advertising space. You could be putting a testimonial in there. You could be putting, a value statement in there. You put a picture of your kid in there, right? But because everybody has used a van or a vehicle in their ad, they think, well, that's what I got to do. That's what everybody does. And you got to say, nope. Look at what your industry's doing and do the complete opposite.
Again, they're all going into the red ocean, right? They're all swimming with the sharks and getting eaten alive, and they're all men competing on price. And that's just it's just a strategy that you just got to figure out how to get out of there. And I love the idea of going and looking at other industries, trying to then apply it. Part of why I wanted you on the show, because obviously I spent a lot of time advising not-for-profits and startups and other entrepreneurs, mostly in the technology space, but this is a great conversation where we've expanded it. And I think some of these ideas and just some of these simple practical things that we sort of maybe all know, but forget to do on a day-to-day basis has been a great discussion and a reminder, I think, for those that are listening. So speaking of those that are listening, if you're looking for some practical ways to improve your customer experiences, as we've been talking about, without, as mentioned, complexity or cost, Vance has put together this fantastic resource called the 52 Ways to Wow Your Customers. It's full of simple, actionable ideas and can be implemented right away. So I wanted to give a little plug to you for that because I actually signed up for it. I get Vance's emails, and it's just simple stuff that just takes some time to think it through and then apply it to your business.
Yeah. And it's literally some of those ideas. There's 52 of them. So you got one a week that you can implement. But it's simple stuff like, hey, how about you just pick up the phone and call 5 previous clients and just see how they're doing? Oh my God, that's earth shattering, a handwritten thank you note. We actually, one of the things we'll do in our home service businesses is we take our top 5 customers for the month and we mail them a cake through the mail. Now, Maryland has a state cake. It's called the Smith Island cake. So it's a famous cake around here. Smith Island actually is not too far from where I live. And every month we send out 5 Smith Island cakes to our top customers. Who sends a cake through the mail? Unless it's your grandma sending it to you for, so now, is that cost a lot? In relative, I don't know, it's less than $50, but the other stuff in there is just almost no cost. Pick up the phone, handwritten thank you note, that kind of stuff.
Amazing. It's funny. The last cake I got in the mail was from my grandmother.
There you go.
All righty, let's wrap this show up. How do people learn more about you and where to find you? What are your socials?
Sure.
Whatever you want to share. We'll put it in the show notes, of course.
I think I'm the only Vance Morris on LinkedIn. Website is vancemorris.com. Very easy to get to. And then that special report that you downloaded, the 52 Ways to Wow Without Breaking the Bank, you can get at wow52ways.com. So, and that would be the best way to connect.
Cool. We'll make sure that there are live links in the show notes so that folks can go check you out, connect with you on LinkedIn, download your documents, and hopefully learn a little bit more on how to serve their customers. Well, before we wrap it up, I'll give you the last word.
Oh boy. Well, I will tell you, it's all implementation. I only have one saying. I'm a very simple guy, so one saying is enough for me. And it is, you won't profit unless you implement. You got to take action. So take one idea you heard today on this show, take an idea you heard somewhere else, and by golly, go implement it, go do it, because you're not going to see any changes if you don't. So find something, do it, move on.
Great advice. As they say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
Anyway, thanks, Vance. Again, I'm John Kuntz. Thanks for joining us in this edition of the Disruptor Podcast. Have a great day.